Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
We don't want to come off as needy, even though we are, and we all are that way. We all need connection. So how are you doing with that? And maybe you need to consider this week to push past those reasons not to and to reach out. And you never know if that phone call or that text or that Zoom chat or whatever will bless somebody, and it might even be yourself. So just something to think about. This song is called, coincidentally, Pride. See me by the river, praying over storms. It's hard to let go of the things I think I need. And if I lose my vision, may I use your eyes to see just where it is I need to be. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. It's made a life of standing in the way of all the beauty this world has worth knowing. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. Truth will keep on shining like the morning sun, brighter than troubled winds can blow. And if you lose your vision, you can use my eyes to see just where it is you need to go. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. It's made a life of standing in the way of all the beauty this world has worth knowing. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. And oh, we're finally free to know the gravity that we can overcome. We can overcome. We can overcome. We can overcome. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. It's made a life of standing in the way of all the beauty this world has worth knowing. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. Oh, pride won't get us where we're going. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. None else could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Yeah. There's not an hour that he is not near us. No, not one. No, not one. No night so dark, but his love can cheer us. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Did e'er a saint find this friend, forsake him? No, not one. No, not one. Or sinner find that he would not take him? No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. 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 No, not one.
Good morning. As we are solidly into the month of May and entering into summer months, I want to make you aware of some opportunities that are coming up. First, next Sunday, May 26th, we will not be meeting in person. This is for a number of reasons. One being that it takes a lot of volunteers to make in-person programming happen each week. And having the day off offers our volunteers opportunities for rest and renewal. So we encourage you to offer yourself the same, some rest, some time for renewal. If Sunday morning content is an important part of your personal rhythm, we won't have in-person services, but we will still be offering an online option that will premiere on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. So again, we will not have in-person services next week, but we will offer an online option. Second, summer dinner clubs are kicking off in a few weeks. These are exactly what they sound like, just casual, low-pressure opportunities for us to connect with one another. They'll be hosted at various homes and locations throughout the Triangle. Each group is a little bit different. They meet on different days, they have different offerings, but all of them will meet between 1 and 4 times throughout the summer. So if that's something you might be interested in, we invite you to check out all the things that you can see and register at crosspoint.org/events/summer dinner club. Also, coming up on June 8th, Crosspointe will be hosting a booth at Apex Pride in downtown Apex. We are in need of volunteers to be at that booth throughout the day. This is a great opportunity to meet other people with volunteers and in the community, to show support for our community, and just have a really good time volunteering at such a great event. You can find out more. You can sign up at crosspoint.org/events/supportpride. Lastly, all of these things and so many more could not happen without you, without your time, your energy, your dreams, your dedication, your donations. So if you'd like to find out more about how to partner with us financially, you can do that at crosspoint.org/contribute, or you can text crosspointenc to 77977. There's so many more things happening at Crosspointe. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to find out more, we invite you to go to crosspoint.org. We are so thankful for who you are, for all that you do. Have a great week.
This might be a strange thing to admit right out of the gate here, but there's a particular bit of imagery in the book of Genesis that I come back to over and over. I've done this for years. It's the last phrase of the 2nd chapter. It says, "The man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." So there you go. That's one of my life verses. Here's why I come back to this. It's because I don't think it's actually about nudity. Lots of people get nude and don't have any particular feelings about it. In fact, it's not inherently wrong. It's our factory settings. It's the way we come. We have to be taught that our naked bodies would be a source of shame. I think the surface level take is about them wearing no clothes, and that's on purpose, but I think a layer down, naked is more something internal. Like they enjoyed a kind of nakedness where they didn't feel like anything in their minds, any of their thoughts or feelings required pretense or protecting. I don't know about you, but nudity, being nude in a garden full of thorns, that doesn't give me nearly the anxiety that bearing my unfiltered self before other people does. Because in my life, that's been far more painful. And so the ways that you and I cover up, hiding our thoughts and our feelings from each other, from even ourselves, the ways that we dress up our true selves, that's shame. And so what do this man and woman do when they eat the fruit that they're not supposed to eat and they feel bad about it? The first thing they do is they react to a sense of feeling exposed. The text in Genesis 3 says that their eyes were opened and that they felt shame all of a sudden. And again, if it's strictly about nudity, when it says naked, how would they know? How do they know they're not wearing a thing they've never seen or heard of? But if they felt like they had behaved in a way that cost them love, cost them peace with their parent, cost them being viewed favorably, then that's a kind of naked, of presenting poorly in your uncovered state that we all can identify with. So they sew fig leaves together to hide their nakedness. There are ancient interpreters of the story who say the forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve ate was a fig, and that that's the fig tree they got their fig leaves from, which is a great insight because the place we learned we might be a problem for other people, especially those who raised us, that's the same place we often begin constructing an image that covers up the problem that we think that we are. So it's really worth noting, if you can allow this story to be more than what I would say are two false extremes, like on one side it's literal history, and on the other side it's a completely useless fiction. In the middle somewhere, there's wisdom in this old parable that suggests that the first reaction of the first human beings discovering that they're not perfect, that they lack perfection, there's not some unrelatable mythic doom that follows. Their reaction to discovering their imperfection, it's psychological. They do what we all do. They hide. Shame sends us into hiding. Shame makes us look at ourselves and create strategies for appearing as someone other than we truly are. Shame makes us believe and tell terrible stories about ourselves as a way of explaining why our life isn't turning out the way that we maybe wanted or felt like others expected it to. Shame makes us tell terrible stories about ourselves to get a sense of control. Like, I'm going to tear me down before you get a chance to. I'll tear me down so that you can't have high expectations of me. And shame can make us take all these bad feelings and cast them out on other people, hurting the people that we're actually trying to love. And I want to really emphasize this. I'm not shaming us for our shame, because shame wasn't something that you chose consciously. The habits we have of relating to ourselves and other people through the shame filter, that goes back all the way back to before you even were aware of what was going on. Instead, what I'm hoping to do is gently suggest that whether you're just getting started as a young adult or you've been an adult for decades, shame is in us. Shame is around us so abundantly that it's hard to recognize. But as we do, a far freer, far happier, loving life will come into view. Someone I care about very much just told me last week that he feels like he's becoming more and more insecure and oversensitive as he's gotten older. He's in his mid-40s. But he didn't say it with any sort of curiosity. He said it with frustration, like he had a rash developing on his arm that wouldn't go away. And then he said, "I'm basically a 12-year-old girl." Do you see the shame in that? Inside and then outside? How much shame that is? You know, emotions are problems for men. That's sort of what it sounded like. You know, unless it's anger. That one's always okay, dudes. We can get angry. All the other feelings and thoughts that need to be expressed, or at least acknowledged, those are an interruption to a good day. And they're an insult to my masculinity. There's no room for understanding. Just rake fig leaves over it. And if you can't, then judge it, condemn it. See if you can condemn it back where it belongs. See if that'll take its energy away so you can get back to business. Distance yourself from it with societal shame, maybe some misogyny. I mean, a 12-year-old girl, can you imagine anything more fundamentally humiliating than to be a 12-year-old and a girl? Ooh, gross, cooties. This is exactly the world I grew up in, by the way. It's how I was taught to think about everything, myself included. But how can we heal if we almost automatically side with the shame voice within ourselves, automatically agreeing to the shaming of others in our culture? I mean, surely we've noticed that all those most unwilling to accept themselves, to bring kindness to what and who they actually are, they're the most eager to condemn other people. See, shame is a strategy we develop for protecting ourselves that we've used since we were very young. So a really comforting way to get the pain of shame off our back is to strap it onto somebody else's back. This is one of the oldest tricks in humanity's book. I can get my own negative qualities off my radar and get almost instant relief. All I got to do is attribute my bad feelings to you. It doesn't work for long. That's why we keep seeing high-profile people accusing other people of things, then later on it's them. Their accusation was a confession. Once you've learned not to live by the terms of shame, you don't care about making sure that other people feel it. I genuinely wish people who feel called to prophetically speak or quote scripture against the lives of other people, I really wish they would finally understand that if they were healed, or what the Bible often refers to as saved, they wouldn't be holding signs on the sidewalk or piously ghosting family members for being what they think is unacceptable. They'd be calm, compassionate, and curious human beings, and they'd be much freaking happier. It's also true, once you've learned not to live by the terms of shame, you don't have nearly as much to defend. In the last month, we've seen countless men responding super defensively to women explaining how they seem to be generally in agreement. They'd feel safer encountering a bear in the woods than an unknown man. I don't know if you've heard this, but this is a thing. This is an incredibly difficult idea to accept about our society and about men and all of that stuff. And the stats and overwhelming consensus of women's experience that only reinforce it, it's hard. But if a man lives by shame, by making sure bad feelings are exported to others for his own relief because he's already got enough bad feelings about himself, where the fig leaves have to be presented for maximum acceptance of others, maximum positive regard, then listening to women doesn't feel nearly as necessary or real as the impulse to dismiss and deny and ridicule and correct and, most importantly, explain that's not fair because it's not all men centering themselves. It's not all of us, as if arguing 9 out of 10 of the cars I sell on my lot, they don't explode. That should instill trust and good feelings in my customers. Listening out of an interior that is calm and compassionate and curious, that's what will naturally happen if we learn not to live under the tyranny in terms of shame. It makes us better listeners, better lovers and appreciators. And this is another way of describing an enjoyable, happy life with one another, the thriving that we talked about last week. But shame says you don't deserve that. Shame says no to that life. Shame says that's a terrible goal, that you should feel badly for wanting to simply enjoy life and help others make sure that they have a chance to enjoy their life. That's not enough. Shame demands way more achievement and earning. Because shame is the ongoing story of how you have to achieve lovableness and respect, and you probably never will. The best you can probably do is fig leaf up and put all the right people down. And I know many of us did, but we don't have to have had terrible childhoods or terrible parents to pick up the messages that we picked up that led us to internalize shame so early on. All we had to be was young human beings in the care of other human beings, and we were. And for just the right couple of things to be off, it would never affect you like it did then, but you were a kid. As children, it happened, and we could have never thought to ask, I wonder what's wrong with my parents or my guardians, that they're not giving me the love, the affirmation, the support that I need. We simply understood in our own little ways back then to internalize what either was or felt like a lack of love or a lack of positive regard as our genuine lack of lovableness on our part. It was our fault. Again, we didn't have to grow up in terrible circumstances for this to be true. It's actually somewhat easier to identify that what happened if it was terrible. We only needed to be inexperienced, vulnerable kids, and we were. And as those kids, we took on board the big and the little criticisms, the big and the little dismissing, the big and little anger reactions adults had about our behavior. All the teasing, the being left out, the failing where others seemed to succeed. We took all that in and believed we were some sort of problem. Because it doesn't occur to a child to ask, what's wrong with my parents and the older people that they're not better at raising me and recognizing that I have needs and that I couldn't possibly be any more mature than I am. So we believe it was us. And we go our whole lives believing it was us. We have things wrong about us that cost us love and positive regard. And so we start sowing very early. And the fig leaf pageant begins. And here we are, adults who've believed our whole lives that we'd be more lovable and more celebrated if we weren't who we actually are. Now, guilt, feeling guilty, that word is reserved for things that you've done that brought harm to others. So feeling guilty about wronging another, that's a sign of a healthy person. Guilt is about what we did. Shame is a story about who we think we are. Our personality, our interests, the way we talk, our intelligence, or our ability to figure things out or learn things or get jokes, our body, our shape, our skin, our strength, how we felt emotionally. It's not that we did anything to anyone. It's about who we came to believe we were. That's what's wrong. And so in a sad and twisted way, it makes sense that the message of Christ, among other things, the message of Christ, who, by the way, walked out of a garden tomb naked at the end of the gospel. I don't know if you caught that. The message of Christ becomes a container for our projected shame instead of the invitation out of shame that it works far better as. No theologian has shaped how we think of Christian faith as much as St. Augustine did in the 4th century. If you don't know much about St. Augustine, then you might be amazed to find out how much that we think of ourselves in faith, the church, Bible verses, all that stuff because of this guy, his writings that the church, the early church adopted really early on. But then even if you do have some familiarity with him and his name, that you at least know he was influential, you might still not understand that he wrote out of a fountain of shame. And for him, it was centered on sexual desire. He felt so ashamed for so many years of his strong sexual desires. Years and years, felt like he didn't have any control over how much he thought about sex, how much he found himself desiring it. He felt terrible for how enjoyable he found sex. You might have heard that he sort of famously prayed one time and confessed it. He wrote it, "God, give me chastity, but not yet." He was full of conflict about it. He felt like a terrible person because he couldn't crush what we now understand is a perfectly normal thing, sexual attraction, your sexuality. It's a normal part of being a human being. And the other totally normal thing, whatever you're forbidden to do or think about becomes far, far more interesting. Augustine is one who essentially invented the idea of original sin from the book of Genesis. Original sin being the concept that since the garden, since Adam and Eve, when they blew it, every one of us is born fundamentally, body and soul, sinful. We are an affront to the perfection of a holy God from the very beginning of our existence. We disgust God until we correctly convert ourselves to the Christian religion. Now, Jewish people, I don't know if you knew this, but their faith predates Christianity by quite a piece. They called Genesis Holy Scripture long before Christians brought it into their own Bibles. Jewish people never interpreted original sin from the text. They don't have original sin in Judaism. The word sin isn't even in the story Augustine got it from. It was Augustine, racked with shame about his own libido, about his body, who saw Adam and Eve's error in the garden as, that's probably sex. Forbidden fruit, that's probably sex. He thought it was code. And he determined that before the forbidden fruit incidents, adults could just consciously decide as a matter of intellectual choice to have children. That's how it happened. There weren't any of that. There was no terrible body pleasure stuff involved. But here we are now, as a result of their great sin, forced to engage in the thing he hated that he couldn't stop thinking about and desiring. So that man's shame was transmitted to you. I don't know what you believe or know about him. You might not believe any of this. It got on you. 1,600 years later, it affects your life. One way or another, his powerful ability to communicate, his misguided conclusions about our bodies and how they disqualify us from the presence of the divine unless they are shamed into submission. It's affected us today. It's in large part why we, to this day, believe all sorts of shame stories about who we really are and what we want. All the way down to little details like saying, that joke is clean, don't tell that one, it's dirty. And while this message isn't, it's not just shame about sexuality, of course it includes that. I can't help but talk about it because it's sort of at the center of the shame conversation about what we are, embodied people as we are. Not just what we did that might have harmed others, that would be guilt, that's a different message. What we are starting all the way back in our earliest years to discover, to look at, there's a liability to the love and inclusion that we needed in being ourselves. And we have internalized this this belief of shame, to the point of believing terrible things about ourselves and just thinking that's right to believe. We've internalized it to the point of feeling like we can't bear any more negative ideas around our identity, so we have to defend ourselves against everything, all feedback and critique. It all feels like an attack. Every criticism, every challenge, even at the expense of our ability to listen and learn and grow. We've internalized shame to the point that it feels more humble and genuine and down to earth to say, oh, I always do stupid crap like that. I could never do what he did. Me? No, I would just mess that up. That feels more real and good to some of us than to say, I don't know. I've never given time to see how I would do. I probably could. For generations, we've internalized shame so much that we believe God feels the same way. God's more disappointed than proud, easier to imagine angry than proud, more likely to pour out wrath than to laugh with us, more horrified by our imperfections than understanding of the limitations God should know better than anybody that we have. There's this great little movement in the Gospel of Mark and that I think about every once in a while. Maybe it will give you some more imagery. If the naked people in the garden didn't work, you can use this one. It comes from the 6th chapter of Mark. It says, Jesus left the place he was and he came to his hometown. This is Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. It has less than a glowing reputation, Nazareth. So much so that John's gospel, there's a man named Nathaniel, and he's invited to meet Jesus in Nazareth. And he goes, can anything good come from Nazareth? So the place has this shamey reputation. And it says he left that place and came to his hometown, Nazareth, and his disciples followed him. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astounded. They said, where did this man get this? What is all this wisdom that's been given to him? What deeds of power are being done by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us in town? And they took offense at him. They're saying, we know this guy. Where'd he get all this? This is what's his face, the carpenter's kid. Well, we should say the carpenter's kid. You guys remember the gossip about who his dad was, or just exactly who the father actually was. You remember his mom that said God gave her the baby? She really stuck with that story, didn't she? Right. So who is Jesus ripping off to get these words of wisdom? Where's he getting all this? Now he's going to come back here and regale us with all this? Where did he get this? We're supposed to believe that, some of the kids in that family, they turned out just to be unremarkable citizens of Nazareth, but one of them has wound up as the Messiah. So they take offense at him. They have stories about him, and this person in front of them, it doesn't match. They take offense at him. Then Jesus said to them, prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown and among their own kin and in their own house, which is humor. And it's not just humorous that he said it where he said it. I think it's a hilariously encouraging thing for Jesus to say to us. So don't worry about the prophet part. I'm not saying that you have to be a prophet to identify with this. There's a broader sense that we can get our arms around. You can be all kinds of cool things in this world, but when you go home, you're going to find the fig leaves are wilting. Have you noticed that? And then it says Jesus could do no deed of power there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and cured them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. Again, there's little chance we could identify with Jesus if we get too literal here. But there's a thing that happens that I find helpful. Jesus is in his hometown, and the story that people have in their heads about him isn't about who's in front of them. What's in front of them is this projection. What's in front of them is a fabrication of their own making about what they thought they knew from the past, and it doesn't match, and so they go with the thing in their heads. He was allowed to come home less, but he can't come home more. Now, the shame story can't tolerate that. But Jesus neither internalizes their shame, their belittling, their limitations, feeling badly about himself. That's probably what I would have done. Went home and nobody believes in me, and I've hung my head, and I would have felt a certain way about it. He doesn't do that, nor does he react against them, put them in their place. You guys want to see what messiahs can do? And then, does essentially something that belongs to Harry Potter. He does heal some people. He does what he's able to do because he's still acting out of love and compassion. And then he seems to accept, I can't do any more than I've done, but not because of me and my inability. It's other people's stories. That's the limiting factor. See, when somebody sees you negatively, when somebody can't accept you as you are, or maybe as you've become, as you've grown, well, that's a statement about them. They're expressing their limits, not yours. Shame will tell you to sew your fig leaves together in a different pattern when you come up against that. Change yourself a little bit. Get them to approve and agree with what they see. Or it'll tell you, reflect the shame back on them so you can feel some relief. Put them down. Put them in their place. But when we act from our true selves, which is calm and compassionate, curious and creative at our center, then he went about among the villages teaching. He left. He went to the villages to do his thing. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. That's a way of describing demons. He ordered them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not to put on 2 tunics. Let's not be excessive. And he said to them, wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the place. Don't move around getting people to compete to host you. And if any place will not welcome you, and they refuse to hear you, as you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them. So they went out and proclaimed that all should repent. And remember, in the Gospels, repent. It means to turn your mind and your attention back to the reign of God, which is unfolding here and now. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. Brush the dust off of you, the dust of those who they won't accept you, they won't listen to you, they won't see you. Brush it off of you as a testimony against them. That's some harsh language, maybe a harsh performative ritual, but Jesus didn't tell them, go do it to their face. He didn't even say go do it in their presence. He told them, using an existing Jewish custom at that time, leave town, and then make sure you're actually leaving it. Don't take the town with you. Get the town off of you. He doesn't say, here's what you can call them. Here's how to defend yourself against their disagreements. And he doesn't try to motivate them with shame, like, I've risked a lot for this gospel message with you clowns. Don't blow it. He says, brush off the dust as a testimony of them. It's their limits, not yours. Don't internalize that stuff. Get it off of you. Do what you can, but don't go on carrying with you the dust of their disqualifying stories as though that is part of your identity. My friends, it's as St. Taylor of Swift spaketh so long ago, baby, I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake. I shake it off. I shake it off. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Now, if you want to reduce shame for other people, here's the best things I know to tell you. Learn to engage with people's ideas and their performance, if it's work-related or it's something that needs to be brought up. Engage with their ideas and their performance, and do that as one who works very hard to make it very clear that the person behind the ideas and the performance is valued and cherished most of all. If you disagree with someone's idea, and that will happen, it might be happening now, or you disagree with their choices, and then you say, you're an idiot, that'll feel really good. Trust me, I know, firsthand experience. Or you can even say something that's less PG than that, but you won't have disagreed with them. You certainly won't have corrected them. You will have shamed them. You will have triggered the shame within them as well. And so you will have just made the world a little bit worse for both of you, even if your conclusions about the subject are the correct ones. So show people that you see them apart from what they produce, what the ideas that they come up with, and the shame in you will heal a little bit for both of you. The next thing I want to tell you is reduce disgust psychology in your vocabulary and in how you frame things. It's everywhere. It's been everywhere for thousands of years. It's super difficult to. You make me sick. You're disgusting. You're vile. You're a wretch. I'm a wretch. Sometimes we sing that. You're a piece of crap. You're revolting. All the body part names that we have for people that we don't like. I mean, pick an area of the body. You can sort of describe a person by the body part. I've been hearing in recent years younger women explaining how somebody gives them the ick. That's disgust language. And that stuff goes all the way into a young soul and stays there for 100 years. So best you can, refuse to use disgust language that frames other people as gross, something to be expelled, or even making the rotten food face, super tough one for me, the stinky sock face. You're telling them without words that you're disgusted by them, framing things you don't like as filthy, but things that you do like as pure. This is one of the reasons conservative Christianity's purity culture has been so terrible. There's multiple reasons, but this is one. It's the framing. A woman who chooses to become sexually involved with a partner is impure. That means unclean, contaminated, soiled before God and people. You notice that's not the language we use for the boy. She's now a contaminated product. What a I was going to say vile. There I go, wanting to use disgust language to show how strongly I feel. What a terribly hurtful, shaming thing to label someone, or to a label to put on yourself, especially when the same act with the approved person. Well, no, that's good and holy and beautiful. So take as much disgust language out of your vocabulary and out of your framing as you can. Now, here are a few steps, a few things, and they do sort of work as steps, but I'm sure that there could be 17 steps. Here's a few if you want to just start a healing journey where shame is concerned. So this will at least get you started. And I hope you have somebody to discuss this with and to work on this with. One, it's noticing. We talk about this a lot. It's noticing. And you will notice more and more and more. Someone close to you says something about how you did a thing. And there's a story that immediately bubbles up. He's always criticizing me. I'm always being corrected. Somebody says, why did you do it like that? Why did you do it that way? And it feels like an attack on your intelligence or your abilities. And you probably won't have the conscious thought either that you're being attacked or, oh no, I'm having love taken from me. I'm not lovable. It won't work like that. It's visceral. And so the noticing it's more of a noticing the visceral feeling that bubbles up, and it shows up fast. And in my experience, there's two really quick explosions. The anger, annoyance part, immediately followed by an impulse to put that negative feeling on the other. So it's, fault finder. You never. Why does it matter? You could have told me before. Or it could be a completely other thing, like noticing how a sad or lonely or defective feeling bubbles up when you find out you weren't invited or included or chosen for something. Noticing how that feeling has stories attached to it. I've never been what people want. I've tried so hard, but it's never enough. Never. Or noticing how you have to announce your deficiencies, disclaimers and self-deprecating stuff. Maybe it's just that you don't take yourself super seriously. There's a version of that. That's fine. But if it's a pattern, it's what someone else would call your personality. It might be that you're always trying to avoid being a disappointment to others by keeping their expectations low. It might be that you already know how annoying and dense and subpar people are going to find you. So you say it so that they have less need to say it about you later with other people. You may even be using self-deprecating shame words on yourself because you're fishing for compliments. Because your shame long ago persuaded you that being pitied, that feels close enough to love to settle for. So notice these stories and the feelings that come with them and how they want to become an action or inaction. They want to become words. They want to become the absence, like cold silence. These stories, they want to become your identity. And they feel so true. We notice them. Don't judge them. Don't shame them. We just observe them. There it is. And we look at it with curiosity. We open ourselves to understanding that part of me is trying to get its needs met with this shame thing that I'm doing. And then once you notice it and you're open to understanding it, then you lovingly question. She doesn't respect me. He thinks I'm an idiot. I'm never good enough. No one wants to hear me talk. I'm never going to get that job or that spot, or no one cares about what I care about. Gentle questions. You know, I've felt these shame stories most of my life. What evidence is there in reality that could contradict them? Do I pay any attention to contradicting stories? What are the moments where respect actually has been given to me, but maybe I didn't notice it? What makes me declare that nobody cares about me? Nobody wants to hear me talk. Nobody understands me. How would I know that that is true? What's the counter argument within me? What in my life offers a counter argument to the big shame feelings? Or you could ask, is it possible that I don't like getting feedback about certain stuff, like stuff around the house or things that I say or my beliefs or the way that I do my job, because I already feel so much insecurity that I'm not enough in those categories? It's hard for me to feel good about those things. And so wouldn't that mean that this is about me? This is what's inside me, not her or him or what they're saying. You question it. You don't judge it. You just question it and bring curiosity to it. And this is tricky because shame just wants to be upset about all of this in the moment. So you got to go slow and gentle, and you're not going to get it right. You don't shame your shame. It's really hard to be rational in moments like that. But you're quite literally exploring it the way that you would with a young child who needs to be heard and then brought into your calm, not followed into their upset. And so this leads to a third thing. We'll just call it living by new terms. And it was this way this day and it's another way the next day. It's not like that. But it's gradually living by new terms. From all this pausing, we get a new method of engaging with shame because it's still going to bubble up. What is internalized and what we try to protect, we start to become aware that we've been for so long trying to hide ourselves, present only a version of ourselves, proving and disproving things about ourselves so we can be regarded the way we want to be. But the better way is acceptance. Not proving anything, not fighting. It's acceptance. It's love and kindness toward the self that the younger you didn't feel like they got. Okay, well, I'll give it to him. And this brings healing. Slow but sure, it brings healing. And then we're able to love others more deeply because we're no longer excluding ourselves from the grace that we're participating in. Now we're really involved in the act of loving things as they are. And as we close, that's the bottom line. We're in this to grow in the way of love toward the self and others. And shame, being the story of how you really are disqualifies you from love. We have to interrogate that. We have to notice and interrogate that and be willing to trade it in for a better way of engaging ourselves, our humanity, our perfect imperfection. And so, my friends, may we dare to live a little more nakedly, being as good to ourselves as we believe Christ is being, so that we might heal and live. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspoint.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspoint.org/care. And welcome home.